right, how is everybody? Okay, good. Oh, I got one. Great. Yes, awesome. Awesome. Okay, whenever I present after lunch, it's kind of like everybody's like, oh, in that after lunch lull. So I always have to ask if anybody could use a little something to energize your brain. A little something to energize your brain. Anybody? Okay, we got it. Heads up, coming at you. Oh, intercepted. All right. We have to watch this. Don't want to hit anybody in the head. Oh, that wasn't me. That wasn't me. Anybody over here? All right, we got one here. Anyone in the back? Oh. Right there. And I think we had one in the back. Okay, I'm going to try. Right at, oh. Did he get it or did you get it? You got it? Awesome. All right, it's a little cute little way to start the presentation, but it definitely gets everybody's attention and has everybody, your brains are alert now, and that's what I want, because we're going to be talking about the brain a lot in this presentation. We're going to be sharing a lot of neuroscience, some neuropsychology, and we're going to give you some tips and things that you can do to help to improve mental health across the board, and even just some environmental things that you can do in your life on a day-to-day basis that will be helpful, that neuroscience has shown for that. So when we look at figures connected to depression, mental health, stress levels, it's really kind of alarming. One of the ones that hit me is this, that you can't really see my pointer very well, but this one here, that nearly 3 in 5 of working Canadians are affected by a mental health diagnosis. That's pretty high, and these are more current. These are 2022 to 2024 figures, right? Roughly 70% of working Canadians report that their work experience impacts their mental health. So there's a lot of depression, and mood disorders figures doubled through the decade from 2012 to 2022. So it's definitely something, and I pulled these figures for you specifically here in this country, but the figures are very similar when you go into the US or you go into other countries. And some countries, especially the developing countries, their figures are even higher oftentimes. So it's something that we definitely need to pay attention to, because when this happens, then it affects our the way we think, right? It affects the way we process day to day. You find yourself feeling overwhelmed, perhaps procrastinating oftentimes things that you need to be doing. Maybe you have a difficulty focusing, and I'm going to talk about why that is in just a minute. And maybe you just are always scattered, or you just feel overwhelmed with yourself. You're not progressing. You become very negative in a lot of your internal thinking. And when that happens, it does damage actually to the brain, right? There are areas of the brain that begin to shrink in size based on scans of the brain, functional MRI scans, PET scans, positron emission tomography scans, SPECT scans. Areas like the hippocampus. The hippocampus is really important. The hippocampus is the area of the brain that's crucial for memory retrieval, memory housing. So when you start to lose gray matter there, you lose neurons, you lose the ability to access those memories, or you could even lose those memories themselves, so you can never retrieve them again. The prefrontal cortex is a portion of our brain that is so important for higher thinking. This is where executive functioning takes place. So we want to have this not only healthy and accessible, we want to grow it, we don't want to shrink it, right? These are areas, the thalamus is important for processing incoming data. So it makes us kind of stop and take a pause on where our mental health is and how our brain health is. Because if your brain isn't healthy, then you're going to suffer mental health issues oftentimes, and vice versa. When you are overly stressed, we also see similar things on a brain scan. Now, use the term stress, but in actuality, stress is an external event. What it is processed in the brain is anxiety. And I'm going to tell you about how that actually works physiologically in the brain. But when that happens, the brain loses the ability to manage stress management neurochemistry, right? It doesn't produce those stress managing molecules. It kills off brain cells in the hippocampus, and it also shuts down or slows the ability of the prefrontal cortex, or that higher thinking. I'm going to show you a slide in a minute of what takes place in there. then you have things like this happen, right? You can't manage your time, you don't want to get out of bed, you have strained relationships at work and even on a in a personal scale. Your productivity goes down, you can't focus, and it has an effect on your physical health. Years back when I was studying originally I started about 30 years ago, studying for a degree in natural health. That was my goal. And this book, Head First by Norman Cousins, completely shifted the trajectory of my career, because it was all about how the connection, psychoneuroimmunology, which is this big long word that just simply means the connection between what you think in your mind, how that shifts the chemistry in your brain, and then how that affects the immune system. Literally, how it affects the body's ability to produce immune cells. And it was fascinating. Some of the statistics or some of the studies that came out of it from this book is the Glaziers found that their husband and wife couple found that stressors in life can cause a reduction of disease-fighting immune cells. And I'm going to explain in a minute physiologically what happens in the body to the reason why. Dr. Levy and Dr. Herberman found that depressive behavior, right, was associated with diminished natural killer cell activity and accelerated tumor growth. Right? That's pretty scary. Dr. Stein found that depression can lead to decreased T and B cell activity, which is your immune cells, right? So we want to pay attention to this. Stress causes an intense cardiac response oftentimes, and this is the anxiety connected to stress. When that happens, you actually have the damage to the arterial walls, and that's where you wind up with heart issues. Dr. Sapolsky, he wrote a very fascinating book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. Big, thick book, but it is a fascinating read. He has studied this in detail, stress in detail, and stress effect on the body, and he found that chronic exposure to these glucocorticoids, which is cortisol, epinephrine, adrenaline, it actually causes that shrinkage in the amygdala, or in the hippocampus, that memory center. This is the scariest factor of all that I have found, and it is that when you have these little things on the edge of your chromosomes called telomeres, and the telomeres protect that chromosome from aging, right? When you are under chronic stress, for every 1 year of chronic stress, it equals 6 years of life or aging for that telomere. So your cells actually die faster. They get old and die off faster, which in short means it shortens your life physically. So it's something that we really, really want to pay attention to. And the great thing is that neuroscience is helping us to see that we have a lot more control over it than what we ever thought we did in the past. Right? Because if you can change your mind, if you can shift your thought process, you can actually control the chemistry in your brain. Now, I want to emphasize that there are situations, a lot of out there when you talk about mental health, that the chemistry balance in your brain is just off. It's like having diabetes. Diabetics cannot, especially type 1 diabetics, they are born with it. They have to take insulin to keep that balance in their body. There are mental health issues that I always encourage people to reach out for assistance with, because sometimes it's just a chemistry thing that you cannot change. So always keep that in mind. But what I'm going to help you with today are the things that you can change and have been found in a lot of scientific studies to assist in depression, alleviating depression, and helping with mental health disorders, and helping you manage that anxiety. So we're going to talk about how literally through that cognitive thought, you can shift that chemistry. Dr. Rady is one of the neuroscientists that I started studying after my session in psychoneuroimmunology, and he has some fascinating writings and white papers out there. And he makes the statement, a better understanding of how the brain works will help us to get a better understanding on who we are. And I'd like to extend that by saying why we do what we do, why our brain acts the way our brain acts, and how do we then control that. So first I want to give you a little brain anatomy lesson here. And I want to introduce you to this little part of the brain called the amygdala. How many of you have heard of the amygdala? It's kind of, it's been in the news a lot. Well, you heard of it because I talked about it earlier. No, I'm just joking. Right, so it's been in the news a lot because in the last decade, they have discovered so much about the limbic system in the brain, which is this lower portion of the brain here that includes the amygdala, the hippocampus, the hypothalamus, the thalamus, those areas. This whole bottom section of the brain is an autopilot section of the brain. It's already programmed. You can control it, but 99.9% of the time, unless you use your thinking, it's going to run on autopilot. Now, the amygdala, the functioning of the amygdala is it's kind of like the triage center for your sense, for the information that comes in from your senses, right? So all but the sense of smell, all of the sensory input goes in through the thalamus. The thalamus then sends it up to the top part of the head or top part of the brain, and then down to the amygdala. Now, it gets to the amygdala a whole lot faster than to the thinking portion of the brain. So the thinking portion of the brain works very slow compared to the two lower regions. You've got the thinking portion, you've got your emotion portion. It works 80,000 times faster than the thinking portion. And the action portion works 100,000 times faster than the thinking portion. So very, very, very quickly. So what happens is when the sensory information comes in through the thalamus to the amygdala says to the hippocampus, where memories are housed, is this information coming in, is it good, bad, or is it neutral? Where does it fall? So tell me if there's any memories connected to this. And then I'm going to either tell the body to produce positive neurochemistry or what we consider negative neurochemistry. Now, how this works, to tell you how this works in real life, I'm going to walk you through a scenario here. So let's say that out here in your busiest part of the city, you have met someone on a busy Friday night, you're having dinner, and you're having a great old time. As a matter of fact, you have stayed there until the joint closed, right? You walk out the door, and behind you, the night manager locks the door. You say goodbye to the person that you just had dinner with. They're parked way over there that way. They head in that direction, and you by yourself walk this way down a street that looks similar to this. And as you're walking, out of the corner of your eye, very, very quickly, your amygdala notices a dark figure walking towards you. Now, 80,000 times faster, so very, very quickly, it says, is this good? Is this bad? Is this neutral? It says, the memory banks say, ooh, this is bad. So what happens is the amygdala hijacks the brain in that moment. It flushes the body with these glucocorticoids, adrenaline, cortisol, norepinephrine, so that you can move very, very fast from point A of danger over here to point B of safety. Now, when you get to point B of safety, you walk into, let's say, a busy hotel lobby or something. You take a deep breath and you go, okay. Boy, that was scary. I don't know what that was. Well, what it was the night manager at the restaurant coming to give you your cell phone because you left it on the table. See, here's the thing. That lower region of the brain has no idea between real danger and perceived danger. So when you are in highly stressful situations, even though they might not be a danger to your life, your brain may process it that way. By processing it that way, it is flushing the body with these negative stress hormones constantly. Now, in addition to doing this, it has to take the energy from somewhere because that's a very high energy activity to do this in the brain. Now, when it does that, it shuts down 3 primary areas in the body, or in the brain, I should say. So one is the immune system, because in the next 5 minutes, if you die, it doesn't matter how many white blood cells you have running through your body. It shuts down to a slow crawl your digestive system, because in the next 5 minutes, if you die, it doesn't matter if your food's digested. And it shuts down the most beautiful part of our brain, and that is our prefrontal cortex. Our prefrontal cortex, or the frontal lobes, are that higher executive functioning portion of the brain. This is where all of your problem solving, creative and fact-based problem solving takes place here. All of your inhibition control, personality, awareness of your abilities, your ability to understand the consequences of your actions, right? So when we talk about things like safety, you want this portion of the brain always on fire, right? When you are working in a potentially high dangerous type of a situation, this is where you want all the activity. Well, guess what? The amygdala and the prefrontal cortex cannot be on fire at the same time. If one is on fire, the other one is dormant. and vice versa, right? So we want to, this is why stress becomes so damaging. People who are under chronic stress often have digestive issues, right? They often suffer from things like depression or mental illnesses because the serotonin, which is your happy, feel-good chemical or neurochemical, 90% of it is produced right here in the gut. So if your gut is constantly being shut down because of high stress and anxiety, right, and depression, what's happening? You're messing with your entire, it's just like a downward spiral, right? So this is some of the things that happen in your body and why we have to become so aware of what's going on. So we have a formula called the ACT formula. And what this is it helps you to use your brain, use your thought process to change the chemistry in your brain to then help you to calm and control your brain through controlling your mind. So the A stands for awareness. Be aware of what you are thinking as you're going through the day. When you are feeling high anxiety or you feel like you're really stressed, you need to know what's going on in your thought process. What are you thinking about? We talk to ourselves constantly. We're always talking to ourselves. We don't realize it, but that's what thought is. That's what internal thinking is you're just having this conversation with yourself. So what is your internal thinking and where is it coming from? That's the ACT. The C is changing that internal dialogue, changing that thought process so that you can now then go to the T and think more, actually engage that frontal cortex and train your brain to work differently. Sorry, I was trying to get in the right spot for the team's camera. I apologize for that, moving around too much. So let's start with the A. Let's start with the awareness. What do I mean by the awareness? Well, you really have to stop and think. And you have to engage that prefrontal cortex. And one of the best ways to engage the prefrontal cortex is through a specific breathing pattern. Now, breath work is excellent in dealing with any kind of mental stressors. Right? For example, one of the best ways to get your brain to calm down in the midst of an anxiety attack is to do what we call a box breath. So it's 4 counts in, hold for 4 counts, exhale for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts. You do that 3 times. What that will do is it will slow down and calm the sympathetic nervous system, which is basically your amygdala, your limbic system, and it will raise back up the parasympathetic, which is the calm and opens up that prefrontal cortex. So we're going to kind of do it all together here, but I want you to do it I want you to put one hand here and one hand here. And what I want you to notice when you take a breath is I want you to breathe diaphragmatically. I want you to breathe from here. You want your lower hand to move first. So let's breathe in for a count of 4. Hold. Exhale. Hold. By the way, in that exhale, you exhale through your mouth when you're doing that box breath. Do that, like I said, 4 times, or 3 times. And I would practice your breathing just to make sure that you're breathing from your gut. When we are anxious or having an anxiety attack or a mental health moment, right, we're kind of like this. Like when you're stressed, you're like this, which means you're actually restricting the ability of your lungs to move. So you need to expand that and make sure that you're breathing correctly. Now, when you want to open your prefrontal cortex and actually activate that, you do another specific type of breathing, and it is 5 counts in, hold for 3, 6 counts out. However, this time when you exhale, you're exhaling through your nose, your nostril exhaling. When you do that, it activates the frontal cortex of the brain, which is what we want when we want to engage that. We want that to be on fire so we can actually think. So the first thing that you're going to do in this awareness step is you're going to get that part of the brain really ready to think. And then you're going to ask yourself specific questions. What am I feeling? Right? What is this fear? Is this anxiety because of bills? Is this frustration because of poor communication on the job or with a significant person in my life? What am I feeling? Why am I feeling this way? Right? Why did that thing that somebody said to me, why is it bothering me? May have really nothing to do with them or what they said, but it might be connected to something in the past that you had a negative experience with. So why am I feeling this way? What is it connected to? Is it connected to this moment, or is it connected to something completely different and I'm just reacting with anxiety right now? What's going on around me? So you start to identify and become aware of this, because you can't fix a problem if you don't know what the problem is or where the problem is stemming from. Because sometimes that problem, went the wrong way, sometimes that problem may come from all the way in the past, may not even be something in the present. It could be something that was programmed in the brain by significant people in your lives. I often tell people the worst thing that a person can do to another person's self-esteem, or the worst thing that can happen to a person's self-esteem, are the insignificant things said to them by significant individuals in their lives. So the teacher that told you when you were 8 years old, "What is wrong with you? All the answers are on the board. Why can't you get it?" Right? That's programming something very negative in the brain. So now when you're an adult and a coworker or a leader or a manager says to you, "Why didn't you get this? I explained it to you 3 times." You get a gut reaction. Your amygdala fires up, your prefrontal cortex shuts down. And it's not really connected to that moment. It's connected to something that happened when you were 8. So this is a pattern that you have to, this is why the awareness is so important. Because now you can start disconnecting, or you can start controlling it by your thought. I throw this slide in here because I like people to understand what a lot of this is based on. This is based on these types of scans. Right? When you look at the scan on the right, this is basically a calm brain. It's a brain at rest. It's a calm brain. The brain on the left, no, I'm saying this backwards, right? The brain on the left is the calm brain. The brain on the right is the brain of someone with PTSD, when they should be in the same calm state. But what you notice is what we call this diamond pattern right here. And that's bad, because that's all down in this lower region. That's the limbic system that's just on fire in just a normal state. But their brain's constantly on fire. And remember, amygdala and prefrontal cortex cannot be on fire at the same time, which means they're under constant stress. So when we talk about mental illness, we're literally talking about things that are going on in the brain. It's not just snap out of it. It's not that easy, because you have to control this. You have to control the brain. So now let's talk about the change. Right? Actually changing your thoughts. How do you begin to shift that pattern of thinking through cognitive behavioral control? You don't want to be a hamster on a hamster wheel, right? Worry is like rocking in a rocking chair. You're constantly moving, you're spending all this extra energy, but you aren't getting anywhere. And that's what anxiety is kind of like, right? Most of the time, the things that we worry about are things that are completely out of your control. And I told Nella, this is a front page of a worksheet that we have, and so we're going to send this to Nella, and anybody who wants it can access it through HR that way. But it is really important to understand that so much of what we tend to worry about and get anxious about are things we have zero control over. So every ounce of energy that we are expending in that moment is wasted. We can't control the weather. We can't control politics. We can't control things that are going on externally. We can't even really control another person's opinion of us. We can control how we interact with them, right? But we can't control their opinion of our personality. And yet these are some things that really cause a lot of stress. So you want to really first off, am I stressing over something that is completely out of my control? Is this depression that I'm depressed about really something that doesn't have to do with me? It has to do with something completely different, right? So that's step one. And I want to talk for a minute about anxiety versus excitement. Anxiety versus excitement. Now, interestingly enough, both anxiety and excitement fire the limbic system, fires the amygdala. The difference is your processing of it, your thought pattern connected to it, your perspective. Think about it. When you are anxious, when you've got a lot of anxiety going on, what do you feel in your gut? And doesn't your gut just feel like, kind of in knots? What do we call it when we're excited about something? What goes on in your gut? Butterflies, right? Right? That is the same physiological response. We've just labeled it with a negative and a positive label. So how we process that feeling is going to have a lot to do, and how we process it internally with our thought process is going to have a lot to do whether or not we look at this situation as something negative and causing anxiety, or the potential for something wonderful that can cause excitement. This company I know has gone through a lot of changes over the last year, and some of those changes probably could have caused you guys a little bit of anxiety, right? What's going to happen? Am I going to keep my job? Whereas if you looked at it as the potential for something exciting, new friendships, new workers, new opportunities to move up in the company, right? Same exact situation, but depending how you processed it in your thinking, depended on whether or not you got knots or butterflies. Make sense? So change the way you're thinking. You also have to control what I call the rants. The rants are regularly reoccurring, automated negative thoughts. Now, these come from that programming. These come from things that we have experienced everywhere in our life up till now. Most impactfully, the things that happened pre-puberty. The brain kind of goes through 4 main developmental stages, as I like to describe it. So you have your toddler stage, up to your toddler stage, where really this brain is figuring out, what is this world? That's why toddlers pick up everything and put it in their mouth and touch everything, right? They're trying to figure out what this big wide world is that they just entered into. Then the brain goes into the next stage, post-toddler, between toddler and puberty, and this is where that brain is figuring out, where do I fit in the world? What is my place in the world? So you can imagine any of those insignificant things said to you by significant people in your life during this period, it programs the brain and can cause a lot of these automated negative thoughts. Because then when you get to puberty, the brain has a huge shift. It kind of locks down into the subconscious all of that programming, because now the brain has to focus on this massive hormonal shift in taking this person from a child into adulthood. So during that time, you get a lot of this programming that goes on. So we have to work to control them. How do we control them? Through critical thinking, engaging that prefrontal cortex, taking that breath to open up that thought process, and then you start to ask yourself these questions. And you can do it with or without a piece of paper, or you can do it with or without journaling. I'm not a big journaler, but I am what I call a brain dumper, which means I will just dump thoughts onto the piece of paper. Words, doesn't have to be complete sentences. Sentences tend to stop the flow. But just ask yourself, is my perspective accurate? Is it right? Is it really, truly logical and accurate? Is it a proactive way of looking at this situation? Remember, if I can't control this situation, then I might as well have a positive view of it, right? Is it true? Are these rants, are these thought processes going in my head, are they really, really true? Is it that I can't do that thing? Or is it that I just don't know how to do that thing? Big shift in your thinking. How does it make me feel when I feel this negative thought versus how would it feel if I didn't believe this negative thought? This can be really big in starting to reprogram the brain, which I'm going to talk about in just a minute. So do the change, do the shift. It's really important to understand that the brain listens to every single thought that you are thinking in your mind, even if that thought is a lie. Those lower regions are just they're just programmed. Very interesting book that I absolutely loved called Words Can Change Your Brain. Dr. Newberg and Dr. Waldman did a lot of work and brain scans on the way that the brain reacted and the brain chemistry reacted to words. And they found that one word has the ability to change the brain chemistry, to influence the expression of genes that regulate physical and emotional stress. What does that mean? Well, it means that they found that when you use positive words like love, peace, loving kindness, okay, you actually increase, guess what? The frontal cortex, the reasoning portion of your brain. And when you use positive words more often than negative words, you activate the motivational centers in your brain. So powerful, right? That beautiful frontal cortex. Researchers at Harvard University found that when you use words connected to like success, rewards, victory, those types of words, you actually cause the brain to produce oxytocin. Oxytocin is a bonding neurochemical. It's what a new nursing mother brains produce every time she nurses her new child, which helps her to bond to that baby. The same neurochemical is produced when you use these positive words. So that bonds the team together, it bonds you and your friends together. Positive words are so important. However, when negative words become the focus, you activate that fear center, you reduce the brain's ability to produce those stress managing hormones, and you shut down that prefrontal cortex. So it's not just that we want to be careful about the words that we use when we're interacting with other individuals. We want to be careful what our internal dialogue is. What are the words that we are using when we talk to ourselves, when we think, because thinking is basically talking to yourself. So what are those words? Let's have some fun with this, okay? Everybody stand up for me. This will keep you from going to sleep. Falling asleep on me. Okay, now we're gonna do a little exercise real quick. So follow me. We're going to do a count of 4. We used to play this game when we were kids. I don't know if you guys did. Some called it concentration. Maybe it's Paddywhack, whatever. You go 1, 2, cross, tap, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Have you do the cross body work because it's really good for your brain. Now you're going to pick a partner. You're going to turn to the partner, and you're going to do it with the partner. All right? So practice it a couple times. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. All right, now that you've got that, we're gonna spice it up a little bit, okay? As you are doing that, you are going to say these 2 sentences to your partner. All right? I loved doing this with you. May you be victorious and win in life. Okay, everybody go. I loved doing this with you. May you be victorious and win in life. One more time. I love doing this with you. May you be victorious and win in life. All right. Okay. We're going to do one more. I can't sit yet. We're going to do one more. But this time you're going to do it just to yourself because you're going to talk to yourself here. Cross your arms like this, kind of rub your shoulders, tap your shoulders a little bit. And you're going to say this internally to your brain. You are going to say, you are amazing. I love your support. Okay? You can say this to your brain because remember, your brain is listening. Okay, you can sit back down. It's like, okay, now my brain's done. She just charged at my amygdala because I didn't know what she was going to tell me to do. I did several things right there. 1, I increased the oxygen level to your brain by 10 to 15% just by getting you to stand after sitting for 30 minutes. 2, I raised the endorphins because you were laughing, right? And 3, I shifted that brain chemistry. Right? It's that simple. So you want to train your brain to use words to work for you instead of against you. All right? When you adjust your thinking, you are going to completely change your life. You really will. You're going to have the same amount of stressors come at you because that's life. But the way you address them, the way you process them, and your mental health connected to that is going to shift. And it's going to help you if you do battle with depression. It's going to help you to take more control over that. Again, there are those times when you need that additional help. So I want to emphasize, reach out for that if you need to. Just these are things that can help you along that journey. All right, the T in ACT is that think and train. Right? So this is all about telling your brain, really programming your brain to do what you want it to do. Right? So I teach people this mindfulness meditation. This is not clear your mind meditation. This is actually activate the prefrontal cortex. So the first thing you're going to do this at the 2 most programmable points of the day. This is when your brain's in theta wave state. Theta wave state is when your brain is going most accepted most accepting of suggestions. And it hits that naturally first thing in the morning as you're coming out of sleep, and in the evening once the melatonin has started to produce in your body and you're starting to fall off to sleep. That's when you're most programmable. And that's one of the reasons why I tell people never touch your phone first thing in the morning. And always put it away at least 30 minutes, if not an hour, before you go to sleep. You do not want the things that are popping up on your phone to be what's programming your head. You want to be in control of what's programming your mind. So during these times, the first step is you're going to become 100% present and 100% in the moment. There's a long process that I teach, but basically you're going to go from you're going to find a nice place to sit, to be. You're going to feel your toes all the way up to your head. You're going to wiggle your fingers. You're going to open your eyes. You're going to look at all the colors in your environment, everything you see, everything you hear, everything you feel. You're going to be so immersed in that moment that your brain is not in any kind of anxiety or stress, because you're anxious or stressed about things oftentimes that are in the past and in the future. But in the moment, you can control that. So become completely present. And then you start doing the program, right? You set your intentions. You start to retrain your brain. And you're going to take it step by step. It's going to be whatever you want to work on in that moment. And maybe it's some of the negative thoughts you want to get out of your mind. Maybe it's I'm going to pay attention today to make sure that I say please and thank you, or I appreciate you. I'm going to use some positive words. I'm going to wrap success into my conversations with other people so that I can get their brain chemistry to shift, right? Whatever, or I'm going to work on this one negative memory that I have, and I'm going to flip that from a negative memory into not letting it control my thought process, right? This is when you start that reprogramming, is in the morning. And then you bookend your day with evening reflections. And during this time, you're going to go through that same process. You're going to become completely present, right? Be in the moment. And you're going to write down or think about some gratitudes, some wins. What were the good things that happened in that day? At least 3. And I always tell people you want at least one of them to be about you, right? What did I do that was good? What did I do that was successful? Right? I made sure that I made eye contact with the people, and I smiled at the people today. At least one person, right? You want that because what you're doing is you're starting to tell your brain, oh, I'm a good person. And your brain's going to believe it. Your brain's going to follow suit. This is when all of that really good reprogramming kind of bookends. And the last thing, this is why you always want to celebrate the gratitudes in the evening, is because what you think about last at night is what your brain is going to focus on while you're sleeping. Okay? So that's the ACT method. Now, there are a lot of things that you can do in actually your environment. The daily habits, daily routines, as well as actually physical things you can incorporate in your environment that have been shown through neuroscience to actually shift the brain chemistry, reduce depression, and raise the positive endorphins, things like serotonin, dopamine, things like that. So, number 1, care for you. As a brain health professional, when people ask me, what is the number 1 thing that I can do to have a healthy brain? I am going to tell them, get a good night's sleep. That is number 1. That is important. If you aren't sleeping well, you are having difficulty remembering things, because sleep, your REM sleep, is when your brain converts short-term memories into long-term memories, right? It solidifies those memories. When you are sleeping, the brain gets rid of beta amyloid plaque, right? That's what leads to Alzheimer's and dementia, so you want to get rid of that. This is when your brain focuses on itself and it heals, and it helps the body heal during this time. So you want to get really good, high-quality sleep. So I tell people, use the CCQD formula. You want it comfortable. Spend some money on a good bed and good bedding, right? Be comfortable. You want it cool. The brain likes 60 to 65 degrees. Now, you may say that's really cold. You can have blankets, so you can be warm. But you want the atmosphere to be cooler. You almost want the body to kind of hibernate when it's sleeping to some extent, right? You want it quiet, right? As quiet as possible. We talked about sound machines with someone this morning. And if you're one of those that has a lot of ambient noise because you live in the city or something and you need a sound machine, that's okay. Just use things with nature sounds, not just the white static. The white static isn't necessarily good for the brain, but nature sounds are. quiet and dark, right? As dark as possible. The pineal gland right here that produces melatonin, when it starts to get dark, the body starts to produce melatonin. If it's too light in the room, then your brain, that melatonin production gets messed up. Hydrate, just a lot of people don't realize that they're even hydrated because before the thirst mechanism even kicks in, you're probably already about 3% hydrated, and just a 3% drop in body hydration causes memory recall difficulties. It causes difficulty focusing on the written word, the printed screen, lowers test scores in math and spelling. So just make sure you get hydration. Exercise, movement, so important, so very important. We could do entire presentations on the benefits of exercise for the body and by connection for the brain. Exercise increases oxygen flow to the brain, which increases cortical activity. We want that. It increases that circulation. It produces endorphins, right? It gives you that good feeling, the dopamine hits. They are naturally coming from exercise. So get in exercise. Dr. Daniel Amen at Amen Clinics, he suggests 40 minutes according to his studies, and he's done over 200,000 brain scans. According to his studies, 40 minutes, 30 to 40 minutes of cardio per day, right? You eat every day, exercise every day, right? And I know that a lot of you are out in the field, and so you feel like you're running constantly out on the job site. It's different. It's different. You want 40 consistent minutes, 30 to 40 consistent minutes. So move. I tell people, eat healthier. I'm not one of those that is going to come up here and say, don't have sugar, don't have, right? The second I tell you don't, that's the first thing you're going to want to go get. So just simply try to eat healthier. Put more good and less bad. Make sure that you're including some of the healthy things like the avocados, the good healthy EFAs, essential fatty acids, the fish oils, the almonds are great for that as well. Your deep colored berries have anthocyanidin in them, which is amazing for the brain and destroying free radicals. So just eat more of the good when you can, less of the bad. And also include some healthy supplements, right? There are things like saffron has been shown in some studies to be almost as effective as Prozac in the brain, right? So is exercise, by the way. So if you're suffering from depression, mental illnesses, things like saffron, 5-HTP, tell people always get L-theanine into the best brain vitamin you can get. This time of year, vitamin D is really important, right? Days are shorter, it's gloomier, that you need the vitamin D and you're not getting the sunlight, which helps produce the vitamin D, and that whole process, vitamin D helps the gut produce serotonin, which is a feel-good. So you might think about just supplementing with some extra vitamin D. Again, if you are under any kind of treatment, be sure to check with your practitioner first, your doctor. Unplug. Get away from technology. The studies of how anxiety-inducing technology is for the brain right now it's scary. It engages the amygdala, let me tell you. So take time every day to simply put technology away, especially for that last hour before you go to sleep, right? Just get rid of it. Or go for walks. Being in nature walking in nature in green spaces has been shown to also produce depression management skills, or I should say it reduces depressive symptoms across the board with all the groups that they have studied when they do this. So leave the phone at home, go for a walk in green spaces if you possibly can. Practice reframing, build your resilience, build your resilience. Individuals who are more resilient have lower rates of depression and can deal with mental health challenges a little bit better, deal with stresses a little bit better. They have that tendency to look at the potential, the possibilities, as opposed to it being a problem or a challenge, right? So I tell people once a month, or in your team meetings when you have them, once every couple of months, take an old problem, throw it on the table and say, how could we have done this differently? How could we have fixed this problem differently? How could we have addressed this challenge differently? Practice doing that, because what it does is it really works that prefrontal cortex, especially the right hemisphere, is to be how you can open that creativity. Continually learn. The more you learn, it's like weightlifting for the brain. When you are learning new skills, Whether it is a new language, it is a piece of musical equipment, it's needlepoint, I don't care what it is, just learning new things actually grows new dendrites on your existing neurons, which means it grows new connectors. So there's more, the neurons can connect better. It also causes something called neurogenesis, which is growing new neurons, especially in the hippocampus. So anxiety causes the hippocampus to shrink. Learning new skills causes the hippocampus to grow in size, right? And that is the memory retention. So do as much learning as you can. Include in your environment things that are brain healthy. Water features. Can you put a little waterfall? We have a little corner in our house that has plants and waterfall in it. There's something magical that happens when those neurons, or when the water molecules break and it puts out negative ions into the atmosphere. And then when you breathe those, you inhale it, it gets into the bloodstream. And it actually has this whole host of amazing things that happen. It improves mood. It improves serotonin production. It improves sleep. It reduces appetite. It improves focus. Lots of positive things. So just doing something this simple is one little tool you can put in your tool belt. Live plants. Live plants, in addition to these facts that you see up here, 34% fewer respiratory problems, 52% less eye irritation, 24% fewer headaches by having certain types of fresh plants in your rooms, in your home where you live. This is especially, again, important during the winter months. There are certain things that have been shown to increase productivity. Exeter University did a study, and they found that Exeter University, in the UK, they found that offices that had fresh or had large leaf plants in them, the workers had 47% improved productivity and 20% improved memory retention from plants. Houses and rooms that have plants in them have 60% less mold because it has a higher quality of oxygen. Aromatherapy is also very, very, very effective. Remember when I said all of the senses except for one go through the thalamus to the amygdala? The olfactory nerve is one synapse away from the amygdala, so it goes directly to the amygdala. So it hits the emotion center faster than any of the other senses. So it has the ability to shift your emotion with a scent, right? So things like rosemary has been shown to improve memory retention in frontal lobe, or I should say lemon and bergamot do memory. Rosemary has to do with activity in the frontal lobe. Lots of different studies that have been on. I've got a whole list of the different things that different scents do. So use that in your mental health toolkit. All right, smile. Smiling is really important. Okay, Dr. Duchesne, years back, he was a doctor that it's called the Duchesne smile. He discovered that when you smile with your eyes, like when you literally smile, moving all these muscles up actually produces endorphins in your brain. It gives you a little hit of dopamine just from a smile. So you see, you can start shifting the mental chemistry of everybody in your office, of everybody out in the field, just by walking up to them and smiling. And they'll either smile back at you or they'll think, she's really strange. Either way, you're going to produce positive chemistry, right? Right? I always tell people, I don't care if you're laughing with me or you're laughing at me, I made you laugh. It doesn't matter. I just shifted you for the positive. Encourage as much gratitude recognition as you possibly can. The studies coming out of the field of neuroscience on gratitude are so impressive. I have just sheets and sheets, right, of research of everything that it does. It improves serotonin production. Serotonin, again, good, feel good neurochemical. It helps to reduce depression, helps to reduce anxiety. It trains your brain to see the good. I always use the example of how many of you have ever shopped for a car and you found that one car that is just car or truck. You use a lot of trucks out here, right? And it's just that one truck. And it's like, you don't see these anywhere. I'm like, I'm going to go get that truck. And you go and you sign the papers and you're all excited. You get in it, you drive it off the lot. And on your 10-minute way home, you see 20 other ones just like it. And you were like, where'd they come from? They weren't here yesterday. Yes, they were. You just told your brain what was important. So now your brain noticed it. Now your brain sees it. It's the same thing with gratitude. The more you start noticing it, it's going to be important to your brain, and it's going to start picking it out because that's what you've told it to do. Stay close to your friends. One of the things that happens to us when we get depressed or when we're in a funk is we kind of withdraw, right? We kind of want to be alone. That's the worst thing that you can do. Loneliness and disconnection from human beings is an epidemic right now. And being lonely has been shown to reduce your lifespan by 26%. That makes it deadlier than things like alcoholism. So when you feel like you want to withdraw, pick up the phone. Don't text. Pick up the phone and call somebody. Just talk to them. You don't have to tell them your problems. You just hear the voice. We are herd animals. We need to connect. Reach out for mental health resources. I know that Oventive has some great ones out there. I know that Nella, you can always contact Nella for that or any of your supervisors, and they'll direct you to where you can get it. If you are feeling the need for that, reach out. Let's remove the stigma from all of this. It's mental health. We want health. So if you need to talk. If you need a little bit of assistance with prescriptions, get prescriptions. If you need, take those extra supplements that are going to help, right? But be sure to reach out. And in the end, I want you to laugh, and I want you to laugh as often as you possibly can. The thing about laughter is that it produces in the brain spontaneous activity of, it's up on the screen. I don't think I can get to that screen. We're going to try this. We're going to see if we can get to this. It produces immune cells spontaneously. It increases, the SIGA is salivary immunoglobulin A. It also, I think I just messed everything up, so now I'm going to have to do it here because I have something on the next slide that I want to show you. Another study showed that, is it going to do this? No. It's not going to do this. Dr. Burke found that it produced spontaneous cell production, natural T and B killer cell production in the brain. Laughter. So create a YouTube video that, and I really want to do this. Create a YouTube video that, I really messed things up now. It's not coming up on the screen. From current slide. Okay, I'm gonna hold this up. I really messed this up now. Let me see if I can get back to this. Let me see here. There we go, yes. Okay, create a YouTube video of all your favorite laughter videos because it doesn't take much to make you feel a lot better. How can we turn this up? I hear it through here. Is there any way you can, no? I don't know if you can hear it. Can you hear it just a little bit or no? A little bit? Hopefully those on Teams can hear it. I'm not sure. You can? Oh, good. Oh, good. The great thing about laughter is it combines things like exercise because you're laughing. You're literally burning calories. You're creating that cardiovascular work. And it makes you feel good. So you get that endorphin rush that is like no other. So laugh. Enjoy yourself. And in the end, when you learn how to change your mind, think differently, control your atmosphere, put in things in your life that are going to help you build good mental health, you are going to become the master of your life. Your brain will listen to you and it will follow suit. You just have to program it to do the right thing. All right?